Have you noticed how fatigue can arrive without lifting a single heavy box? How it seeps in after a day of sparring with opinions, after one careless sentence that keeps echoing like a dropped plate in a quiet room, after that private, breathless race to be more than another shadow on your timeline. In such hours, the soul aches not in the muscles, but behind the ribs, as though a small bird has flown the width of you and found no perch. If that is where you are, linger here. Let your breath arrive like a guest who doesn't knock. Buddhist teaching isn't a coat of perfection you must wear. It is a key you already hold, the one that opens the door back to the room you forgot you built, the room of peace. What exhausts us most is not what we do, but what we won't let go. Surplus words, stacked thoughts, the endless petitions of ego. A sentence tossed in passing can nick the heart. A glance sharpened by judgment can dim someone's little lantern, and that hunger to stand higher, even by a fingertip, burns the very calm we secretly crave. The Buddha reminds us, right speech is honeyed, not because it flatters, but because it nourishes. Harmful words rot first in the mouth that brewed them. We do not win wisdom by winning arguments. We win when the mind no longer needs a trophy. Consider a city under snowfall. Streets that were sirens become lullabies. Hard angles wear soft edges. Even the loudest corner shrinks to a hush. Nothing has been gagged, only covered by a quiet that allows each shape to be seen for what it is. So too with the mind when stillness descends, compassion is no longer a theory. It is the native climate. If today your chest feels tight with weather, give yourself a winter minute. Sit. Inhale all the way to the soles. Let the breeze on your skin be the messenger that says, you are already here. When we stop rehearsing speeches, we start hearing life. In a crowded market, there was once an old watchmaker. People carried to him every sort of timekeeper pocket clocks that clanged like tin mantel clocks, that stuttered a tower clock whose noon arrived whenever it pleased. The square was a cacophony of hours. The townsfolk argued, my clock is right, yours is late. No, yours is drunk. The watchmaker did not raise his voice. He lifted each clock to his ear, listening as a midwife does to the heartbeat of what will be born. He opened backs, brushed away grit, set tiny gears back into friendship, adjusted tension one tooth at a time. Day by day, the square changed. Not because he shouted the time louder, but because he tended to what told the time. At last, when the sun reached its crown, the whole town sang the same note of noon, soft, exact, and together. Why didn't you scold the noisy ones? Someone asked. He smiled. Time won't learn from noise. It learns from alignment. Our debates resemble those unruly clocks. We keep striking our hour into another's face, hoping sheer volume will bend reality. Right speech is the quiet art of alignment. It asks 3 questions at the lip. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it timely? If any answer is no, silence is not avoidance. It is medicine. The Buddha did not praise glib tongues. He praised tongues that knew when to rest. A single unneeded sentence can bruise what no apology can fully smooth. Once a dart has flown, even if we pluck it out, the skin remembers. Imagine your words as seeds you tuck into the ground. Seeds of care will find water even in stingy weather. Seeds of spite sour the soil that held them. You cannot choose the rain. You can choose your handful. Trying to outshout another's pain is like lecturing a house on fire about building codes. Better to bring water. Better to open a window. But what if I am attacked, you may ask? The Dharma does not ask you to be a doormat. It asks you to be the floor itself, grounded wide and unwilling to fling splinters. Response is allowed. Reactivity is optional. Think of a diver easing deeper into the sea to keep hearing. She equalizes the pressure inside her ears with the pressure outside. So too, in conflict, equalize, meet the outer storm with an inner steadiness calibrated breath by breath. Not to suppress feeling, but to let it be felt without becoming your entire world. If the other hurls a burning brand and you do not grasp it, it dies for lack of fuel in your hands. To practice, become a watchmaker of your own speech. Throughout the day, place the sentence that's itching to leap onto the velvet of your attention. Listen for the tick beneath the words, the motive. Is this to be understood or to be admired? Is this to relieve another's pain or to polish my mask? Wisdom doesn't say, never speak. Wisdom says, speak from a place that doesn't need victory. When truth travels with gentleness and timing, even hard news can arrive like good rain. When truth travels with scorn, even blessing curdles in the cup. Let's be practical. Before entering the room where tempers simmer, give yourself a minute outside the door. Not to rehearse arguments, but to tune. Place one palm against your sternum and count 5 slow inhales, 5 slow exhales. On the inhales, collect your scattered selves. On the exhales, release the courtroom in your head. Picture a great cathedral just before the choir begins, air-held rafters listening. You are that nave. Your words are the first note. Do not let them be a cough. Let them belong to the music. When the meeting starts and daggers gleam under syllables, try the craft of questions. Not the sort that cross-examine, but the kind that make room. Help me understand where that worry lands in your body. What would be good enough for now? Questions tilt the table toward collaboration, and if no question is welcome, give the gift of your steady face. The most eloquent sentence in some rooms is a quiet jaw unclenched. If the day goes poorly and a harsh phrase slips out, because some days you are human, then practice repair, not with self-punishment, but with responsibility. Name what happened. Name its effect. Offer a way forward. I spoke from heat, not from care. I imagine that felt like dismissal. May we step back 2 squares and try again. Humility is not groveling. Humility is the oxygen of relationships. Pride is a closed fist. Apology is an open palm where trust can land. And what of the chronic need to be better? Buddhist insight bows to the truth that comparison is a mirage. You cannot drink from it. You can only chase it deeper into sand. The path is not a podium. It is a pilgrimage with room for every pace. When you feel the itch to measure your worth against another, remember the craftsman who tempers silver. He does not strike the ingot forever. He lifts it from the fire, cools it, and returns it only when needed. Your effort needs that same rhythm of heat and rest. To pause is not to lose. It is to keep from cracking. At night, if you can lay a hand over your chest and say, "Today, I spared at least one, being perhaps even myself, from a wound my mouth could have made," then you have trained well. Not perfectly. Well, the Dharma is not a scoreboard. It is a way of carrying the world so the world can be carried. Tomorrow you will forget again, and tomorrow you will remember again. This is the great kindness. The path is not canceled because you took a side street. It waits at every corner where you decide to breathe. Let the last thing you hear before sleep be the most honest clock, the heart. It does not argue. It keeps time with the moon and the morning. You don't need to announce your value to it. You only need to listen until its modest metronome shows you the meter of a gentler speech. The world is noisy. Be the artisan who tends the gears. The square will not quiet overnight, but noon can come to your mouth exact and soft, one word at a time. There are days when the air itself seems dense with language opinions hang like storm clouds waiting to burst. We scroll, respond, defend, attack. We spill words as if silence were a drought to be feared. Yet when night arrives and the devices dim, a strange heaviness lingers not from labor, but from noise. Words, even printed on glass, leave residue on the heart. You can wipe a screen, but how do you clean the mind that has argued with strangers all day? The Buddha once likened careless speech to arrows shot without aim. The wound may be invisible, but it festers nonetheless. A phrase uttered in haste can echo in someone's ribs for years. To live mindfully is not to gag oneself, but to choose words as one chooses medicine. Only what heals, only when needed, only in the right dose. The unspoken is not always loss. Sometimes it is the highest form of compassion. Picture an ancient library before sunrise. Thousands of scrolls sleep in wooden drawers, their wisdom intact, not because they shout, but because they wait. Silence is what keeps knowledge alive. When we grow still, we become like that library, each thought a text, each breath a soft lamp revealing meaning line by line. The world insists we be loud. Wisdom invites us to listen. There once lived a potter by a wide river. Every morning he carried clay to the wheel and shaped vessels of every kind, cups for tea bowls, for rice urns, for ashes. A young apprentice, impatient to learn, demanded, "Master, what is the secret of your hands?" The old man said nothing. He placed a lump of clay before the boy and waited. Hours passed. The apprentice fidgeted, then sighed, then finally sat in silence. Only when his breathing matched the slow rhythm of the river did the potter move. Now he said, guiding the boy's hands, "The clay can hear you." Speech is like that clay, too much force, and it collapses. Too little attention, and it hardens into something useless. The art lies in meeting each moment with the pressure it asks for, no more, no less. Some conversations require shaping. Others require the wisdom to stop spinning the wheel. We think silence is emptiness, but emptiness in the Buddhist sense is not absence, it is spaciousness. A bowl's usefulness lies not in its walls, but in the hollow that holds the soup. The value of dialogue lies not in the number of words, but in the room we leave for truth to rest. Imagine walking through a bamboo grove. When wind passes, the stalks bow and sing. They don't resist, they resonate. If the wind stills, the grove does not sulk, it simply stands translucent in the sun. The enlightened mind is bamboo-like, flexible sounding only when the world breathes through it. Such a mind knows that sound is sacred precisely because it emerges from silence. In modern life, we fear being misunderstood, so we explain endlessly. But explanation rarely breeds understanding. Presence does. Sit with a friend's pain without fixing it. Let the weight of their story settle between you. If words come, let them be small stones, not boulders hurled to dam the river. Sometimes all a wound needs is air and listening. A young monk once asked his teacher, "Master, what is right speech?" The teacher poured tea until the cup overflowed. "Master, it's spilling," cried the monk. "So are you," said the teacher, smiling. Right speech begins when the cup is half full enough to share, but not enough to drown. In every argument, notice the body first. Does the jaw tighten? Does the breath shorten? The body knows when the mind has lost its balance. Before replying, return to the breath. Inhale the insult. Exhale the desire to retaliate. What remains between them is discernment. The Buddha never said you must be silent forever. He said speak only from clarity. If you must speak truth that stings, wrap it in compassion. Think of a physician setting a bone firm, precise, yet tender enough not to shatter. Truth without kindness is surgery without anesthesia. Kindness without truth is a bandage over infection. Both together make healing possible. There's an old proverb: the tree that bears fruit bows low. True strength is quiet, and true humility makes no announcement. The mountain does not raise its voice to prove it's taller than the hill. Its stillness is proof enough. Likewise, the soul that has tasted insight no longer craves an audience. To practice mindful speech is to turn each day into a field of merit. Morning is the sowing, set your intention. Noon is the tending, watch what grows from your tongue. Night is the harvest, reflect on what was said, what could have been left unsaid, and what silence might blossom tomorrow. Do not be discouraged when you fail. Even the river sometimes floods its banks. The practice is to return to find the current again. If you notice the harm your words caused, do not drown in guilt. Use remorse as a compass, pointing you back to gentleness. Every apology sincerely made is an act of cultivation, watering seeds of humility that will bear peace later. And remember, the world does not need more clever talkers. It needs calm witnesses. Those who can stand in the midst of shouting and remain unmoved, whose very silence reminds others of the still place they have forgotten. You can be that reminder. Tonight, when you close your eyes, listen not for music or chatter, but for the smallest sound, the hum of your own breath, the oceanic pulse inside your chest. That rhythm is older than language and wiser than thought. It has carried sages and children alike through centuries of confusion. Let it carry you now. When dawn returns, speak softly, as though your words are pebbles dropped into a sacred lake. Watch the ripples spread, how far they reach, how gently they fade. The miracle is not that you spoke, but that you finally heard the silence between each word and called it peace. At dawn, the world seems unspoken. The hills breathe mist, the streets have not yet invented their noise, and every leaf holds the quiet memory of dew. It is in such hours that truth is nearest, whispering beneath thought like a current under ice. But as the sun climbs, so does the chatter inside and out. The phone glows, the mind races, and soon we are swept again into the stream of doing, proving, defending. Yet somewhere beneath all that turbulence, a river runs, steady, unseen, unharmed. The Buddha called it the nature of mind, pure, luminous, already free. Our suffering, he said, is not in the river itself, but in the way we try to grab it. We clutch at its surface, demanding permanence from what was born to flow. We name things my career, my relationship, my plan, and then ache when the current rearranges them. But the Dharma invites us to see differently. Water never stops being water. Just because its form changes, it evaporates, rains, freezes, seeps underground. Nothing is lost, only transformed. Once there was a glassmaker who lived by a desert. Each morning, he melted sand into vessels so clear they caught the sunrise. One day, a storm swept across the dunes and shattered everything in his workshop. Heartbroken, he buried the shards and left. Years later, he returned to find a lake where his studio had been. The water sparkled with flecks of glass, tiny prisms bending light into thousands of colors. The storm had destroyed his craft, but created something the world had never seen. He wept, realizing the same sun that once filled his cups was now filling the whole horizon. So it is with loss. We think life is breaking us, when in truth it is melting our rigidity. Every disappointment grinds the stone of self-importance into sand, fine enough for sunlight to pass through. The question is not, why did this happen to me? But what wants to shine through me now that this form is gone? Impermanence, the Buddha taught, is not punishment. It is mercy. Imagine if every sorrow, every mistake, every awkward version of yourself were frozen forever. You would have no room to breathe, no chance to awaken. Change is the breath of existence. To resist it is to suffocate. When you stop insisting that the river should stand still, you notice it has been singing all along. In a small monastery perched on a cliff, a young novice once watched his reflection in a basin of water. The surface rippled with wind, breaking his image into fragments. "Master," he asked, "how can I see my true face if the water never stays still?" The old monk smiled. "You cannot," he said, "but the water can show you how to see." Confused, the boy frowned. The master continued, "When you look at the ripples, you chase yourself and suffer. When you look through them, you see the sky. This is the heart of insight, not to polish the world into perfection, but to see beyond its shimmer. The ripples are real, yet they are not all there is. Every emotion, every failure, every joy is but a reflection moving across the surface. Beneath it, something vast and clear remains untouched. Call it awareness, call it Buddha nature, call it peace. It does not matter. It has been watching you since before your first breath. How easily we forget. We build identities like sandcastles, decorating them with shells of memory and flags of ambition. We stand proudly until the tide returns, and then we cry as though the sea has betrayed us. But the sea was never the enemy. It was always home. The same water that dissolves your name also carries your essence into the next wave. To fear impermanence is to fear your own continuation in new forms. To live wisely is to flow knowingly. You do not stop the current, you learn its language. When joy comes, you bow to it. When sorrow comes, you bow again. The river does not ask the leaf whether it prefers calm or rapids. It carries both without complaint. The enlightened heart does the same. It meets gain and loss praise, and blame pleasure and pain with equal grace, because it understands both are made of the same water. Consider this: a musician tunes her instrument before every concert, though it was perfect yesterday. She knows strings stretch air shifts, humidity breathes differently each dawn. If she resists, the sound dies. If she listens, harmony returns. Life is no different. You must tune your heart daily to the pitch of the present moment. The mind that says it should not have changed is an untuned string, tight, brittle, ready to snap. Meditation is how we learn to listen again, to sit not to escape the river, but to feel its rhythm. Thoughts drift by like fallen leaves, and we practice not collecting them. We let them float, trusting that awareness is the water itself. In time, the mind grows wide enough for every leaf, every memory, every fear, and in that widening, suffering begins to dissolve. There will be days when you are pulled into the rapids, when the news breaks your heart, when someone's cruelty leaves a bruise in your spirit. Remember then, the surface may rage, but the depth remains still. Drop your attention beneath the swirl into the quiet that does not move. From that stillness, your response will arise naturally, not from fear, not from pride, but from compassion. The one who sees the river beneath all things no longer fights the storm. They become the calm eye within it. Tonight, when you stand by running water, perhaps a sink, a stream, or even rain sliding down glass, pause. Whisper a single word of gratitude to the flow. It has carried civilizations, tears, prayers, and stars reflected in puddles. It has shaped mountains and the lines of your palm. It will continue long after you release your last breath. You are not apart from it. You are one of its waves. And when tomorrow comes, may you walk lighter, knowing that to hold on is to drown, but to let go is to return to your true element. The river beneath all things never leaves you. It only waits for you to stop clinging long enough to remember how to float. Some mornings the world awakens before you do. The light seeps through curtains with the gentleness of forgiveness, and the air smells faintly of something living, something patient. You step outside barefoot perhaps, and the ground is cool, a silent host that has carried you for years without asking for thanks. The garden waits not for admiration, not for achievement, but simply to share its quiet abundance. It teaches without words. Everything grows when the time is right, and nothing blooms by demand. The Buddha once compared the heart to a field. Whatever you plant there, kindness or resentment, gratitude or greed, will sprout in its season. Yet we so often grow impatient. We dig at the soil to see if the roots have formed, tearing at our own efforts with restless doubt. The Dharma whispers instead, trust the unseen work. The seed's silence is not failure, it is preparation. What appears still may be transforming in ways the eye cannot measure. There once lived a weaver who worked with golden thread. Her tapestries shimmered like captured sunrise, but as years passed, her fingers stiffened, and she could no longer pull the shuttle with precision. Grief stalked her like a shadow. One day, unable to bear the emptiness of her loom, she took the leftover threads and threw them into the garden behind her house. She expected nothing. Seasons turned. When spring returned, the garden erupted not with flowers, but with small vines glinting in the sun. Upon closer look, she saw her golden threads woven by wind and rain into the stems now shining across the field like liquid light. She smiled through tears, whispering, "So even my broken art learns how to bloom." That is how life tends us. It takes what we think is waste and turns it into grace. The hands that drop must someday open. The soil receives without judgment. We are all weavers of invisible gardens, sowing not only through deeds, but through every thought and glance. Even a moment of patience and anger plants a seed of peace somewhere. Still, cultivation requires awareness. You cannot grow lotus from neglect. To tend the inner field is to learn the rhythm of compassion, the watering of others without draining yourself. The lotus, after all, rises from mud, but it does not stay there. It drinks the murk, transforms it, and blooms above it unstained. The mud is not the enemy. It is the teacher that shows how purity is born from depth. The modern heart forgets this. It wants petals without roots, enlightenment without effort, peace without the humility of mud. We rush toward happiness like farmers demanding harvest before the rains. But nature obeys its own timing. When you feel stuck, remember roots grow in darkness first. If your path feels heavy, perhaps life is deepening you. Growth rarely feels graceful while it happens. It is the ache of branches learning the sky. In mindfulness practice, we do not force the garden to bloom. We simply keep removing the weeds that choke it. Greed, anger, and delusion are such weeds. They grow fastest when we ignore them. But pulling them is not a violent act. It is an act of remembering. Each time you notice envy and breathe instead of feeding it, a small clearing opens inside you. Sunlight finds its way in. A monk once asked his master, "How do I know if I am progressing on the path?" The master led him to the orchard and pointed at 2 trees, one tall, thick with fruit. the other small, just sprouting. "Which one is growing?" asked the master. The monk pointed to the tall one. The master shook his head. "This one has finished. The other still learns how to reach the sun." Progress, then, is not in grandeur, but in motion, the willingness to keep unfolding, even when you cannot yet see your own fruit. When the heart becomes a true gardener, it ceases to argue with seasons. Joy and sorrow are not enemies. They are alternating rains. The blooming tree does not resent the fallen leaf. Both are gestures of the same cycle. You may lose what you love, but that loss becomes compost feeding the next tenderness. Nothing essential is wasted. Even pain enriches the soil of awakening. Sometimes healing happens quietly, like moss reclaiming an old wall. You may not notice the change until one day you look back and see that where sharpness once was, gentleness now grows. That is the miracle of sustained attention. No sermon, no ritual, no doctrine replaces the slow devotion of showing up each day, watering, pruning, listening. In the deepest sense, the garden is not outside you. It breathes under your ribs. Each inhale carries pollen from unseen kindnesses. Each exhale sows it into the world. When you speak kindly, even to yourself, a bud opens somewhere in the invisible. When you forgive, a stone inside the heart turns into fertile loam. And when storms come, as they always do, remember that gardens are not ruined by rain. They are ruined only by neglect. To sit in meditation amid turmoil is to offer your garden the rain it has waited for. Each drop of awareness feeds the roots of wisdom until one morning blossoms appear where you thought only thorns could live. When night folds itself over the day, go once more into that quiet space of breathing. Imagine the garden within you, glowing faintly in the dark, thousands of tiny lights, each a kindness once given, each a truth once realized. They do not clamor or compete. They simply exist, illuminating the path home. You are the gardener, and the soil, the seed and the bloom. Nothing in you is wasted, nothing outside you truly lost. The cycle continues, unhurried, unfailing. And in that realization lies a peace the world cannot purchase, a peace that grows wordless, like flowers turning toward dawn. There are moments when life feels like a room of mirrors. Everywhere you turn, you see reflections of yourself, success and failure, youth and age, love and absence. You chase one image, try to correct another, and before long, the mirrors blur into confusion. Yet in all that glittering repetition, one question waits quietly at the center. Which reflection is real? The Buddha taught that the self is like a reflection on water, visible yet untouchable. We see the shimmer and mistake it for substance. We spend lifetimes polishing the image, adjusting how others see us, rewriting our stories, defending our edges, while the real essence, the still water beneath, goes unnoticed. The practice of awakening is not the destruction of self, but the discovery that the reflection was never the whole of you. There was once a sculptor who spent years carving a statue so lifelike that it seemed ready to breathe. Each day he polished the marble until the face gleamed with perfection. When it was finally done, he placed the statue in his garden and visited it daily. But one night, a storm broke the statue into pieces. The sculptor collapsed in grief. An old traveler found him kneeling in the mud and said, "You have lost the form, but not the skill that made it." The sculptor looked up through his tears and asked, "Then what should I carve now?" The traveler pointed to the puddle at his feet, where the moon shone clear. "Perhaps begin with what cannot be broken. So much of suffering comes from trying to immortalize what was meant to pass. We cling to beauty, to titles, to relationships, not realizing that even the most radiant reflection shifts when the light changes. But impermanence is not cruelty, it is honesty. It says, all that you love is part of a greater movement. When you stop resisting that movement, you find a freedom wider than any mirror. In meditation, thoughts rise like faces in polished glass, desires, regrets, hopes. The mind untrained chases them endlessly, but the practice is simple to see without reaching, to notice each image and let it dissolve on its own. Slowly, the surface clears. What remains is not emptiness, but clarity. The mirror remembering it was never the faces it held. This does not mean detachment from life, but intimacy with it. Only when you stop clutching can you truly hold. Imagine a musician clinging to every note she would never hear the melody. The beauty of music is in the vanishing sound, arising and fading in rhythm. So it is with moments with people with breath. The song of life requires the silence that follows each tone. A disciple once asked his teacher, "Master, how do I find my true self?" The teacher handed him a glass of water and said, "Look inside." The disciple saw his reflection. "I see myself," he said. The teacher stirred the water with a twig until the image broke apart. "Now where are you?" he asked. The disciple hesitated. "Gone." The teacher smiled gently. "Good. When the surface is still again, you will see not yourself, but the sky. The sky, ever present untouched by clouds, is another face of the same truth. The clouds pass, the sky remains. Our emotions, our identities, our victories and losses are clouds, sometimes luminous, sometimes dark, but always moving. The practice is to remember the sky. When anger rises, let it drift. When joy arrives, let it shine without gripping it. When sadness falls, let it rain until it clears. You are not the weather. You are the vastness that holds it all. In the noise of modern living, the ego thrives on mirrors. Compare it, whispers, prove. But comparison is the art of forgetting wholeness. You cannot measure the ocean by counting its waves, nor can you measure your worth by weighing your reflections. The mind addicted to approval becomes like a house filled with mirrors, dazzling but suffocating. The path of awareness breaks a window in that house, letting in the breeze of reality. Freedom begins the moment you realize you do not need to defend a reflection. When someone praises you, it's like sunlight glancing off the water, bright but fleeting. When someone criticizes you, it's a shadow passing over the same surface, momentary, without substance. The water does not cling to either. It just keeps reflecting. It just keeps being. In relationships, this truth softens the edges. When we stop expecting others to mirror our desires, we start seeing them as they are temporary travelers on the same road. Love then becomes not possession, but appreciation, the gentle bow to a passing presence. You were here. You helped me grow. Now the path widens. That is compassion in its purest form. Do not fear the shattering of images. Every broken mirror reveals 1,000 new angles of light. When identity crumbles, when roles end, when certainty dissolves, it is not an ending, but a clearing. The light you see through the cracks is the one that was always there, waiting for you to stop polishing. Try this practice. Stand before a mirror in silence. Look into your eyes until the urge to define yourself fades. Let every label, parent, worker, dreamer, seeker fall away. Look longer until what you see is not a person, but presence itself, the quiet witness of all your days. Bow to that. That is what the Buddha meant when he said, "Within this fathom-long body is the world's beginning and the world's end. When you step away, let the mirror keep its images. You have no need to carry them. You were never trapped inside the glass. You only forgot the window behind it." Walk into the day knowing this reflection will come and go, but the light that makes reflection possible, that is you, timeless and free. And when evening arrives, when the sky turns the color of remembrance, do not look for your face in the darkened window. Look through it into the infinite. You will find that nothing has been lost, only returned to transparency. There are days when words feel too small for what the heart carries. On such days, silence is not escape, it is shelter. The world urges us to climb ever higher to reach the next summit of achievement or opinion. But few remember that the mountain's greatness lies not in height, but in stillness. It does not chase clouds, it receives them. It listens to the storms without becoming one. The Buddha often taught in the shadow of mountains. They were his metaphor for the unmoving mind, steady amid wind rooted beneath time. To live with awareness is to be like the mountain, hearing every echo, watching every cloud, yet remaining grounded in the truth that all things pass. Once a traveler lost his way in a range of stone giants. Night fell, and fear grew heavy in his chest. He shouted for help, and the echoes answered endlessly. In panic, he mistook his own voice for ghosts. Exhausted, he sat and finally grew quiet. As dawn rose, he realized that the mountain had been speaking all along, repeating his words so he might hear himself. In that realization, he found his direction again. Life does the same to us. The universe echoes our own calls. When anger returns to us, it is our anger reflected. When kindness circles back, it is our own heart rippling through the valley of existence. To walk the path of wisdom is to learn from the echoes, to speak softer, to listen deeper. In meditation, silence is not the absence of thought, but the presence of vast attention. Sit long enough, and you'll begin to notice the subtle tremors inside the small unrest that chases validation, the impatience that wants meaning to arrive faster. Let them come. Let them settle. Eventually, they quiet like wind, losing interest in the mountain's patience. The mountain does not seek admiration. It teaches by simply being. Snow may crown it, rain may erode it. Still, it stands. Likewise, the awakened heart does not depend on constant joy or perfect understanding. It endures open to every season. Strength in this sense is not resistance, but steadfast acceptance. A young monk once asked his teacher, "How can I know if I have become wise?" The teacher replied, "When your joy no longer depends on the weather." Confused, the monk said, "Do you mean I should ignore storms?" The teacher smiled. "No. Just stop trying to command the sky. There is profound peace in letting the world be the world. The bird will sing, the storm will shout, the stone will wait. You do not have to orchestrate the universe. You only have to dwell within it attentively. When we stop controlling, the mind expands like open air, spacious enough for both sunlight and thunder. Climbing is part of life, of course. Ambition, when rooted in understanding, can build bridges and plant forests. But climb with awareness. Every step must honor the ground that holds it. Too often we ascend without seeing, racing toward the next milestone, only to find ourselves alone at the top, out of breath, estranged from the beauty we hurried past. The wise traveler pauses, often touches the bark, listens to wind threading through branches, and realizes that each pause is arrival. In Buddhist teaching, effort viriya is a sacred act, but effort without mindfulness becomes restlessness. The mountain rises through effort, but it remains through surrender. The key is balance, moving, without grasping, achieving, without being owned by achievement. Imagine a flute carved from the mountain's bamboo. It sings, not by holding the wind, but by letting it pass through. In the same way, life plays its melody through us when we stop clutching every note. Your experiences, the griefs, the joys, the waiting, all are breaths in the divine instrument. Let them move through you. Let the music change. Sometimes others will not understand your quiet. They will mistake stillness for weakness. But silence is not submission, it is depth. The river carves valleys not by shouting, but by persistence. A heart anchored in truth does not need noise to prove itself. Try this small practice when life feels too loud. Imagine sitting on a high ridge, watching the horizon unfold. Every thought, every memory becomes a bird crossing the sky, some bright, some dark, none staying long. You do not chase them. You simply observe their flight. The more you watch, the more the sky inside you widens. That widening is liberation. One day, all that you now chase, the recognition, the validation, the countless unfinished tasks will fade like fog lifting from the valley. What remains will not be your victories, but your clarity. The mountain remembers not the footsteps upon it, only the stillness they left behind. When dusk falls and shadows stretch long across your path, do not rush to descend. Sit. Let the wind speak its last stories through the pines. Feel the pulse of the earth beneath you, ancient, patient, forgiving. You will understand then that you were never climbing to conquer. You were climbing to listen. The mountain listens, not because it seeks answers, but because it already holds them. It knows the language of silence, the rhythm of impermanence, the grace of endurance. You too can learn that song, one breath, one pause, one mindful step at a time. And when you finally rise to leave, you may notice something subtle yet vast. The mountain never asked for your worship, only your awareness. And in that awareness, you become as still, as enduring, as free as the mountain itself. There comes a time when we realize we've been moving for so long that we've forgotten why. The days blend into one another. Tasks, conversations, ambitions, each carrying us farther from something quiet yet essential. Like a river chasing the sea, we rush forward, believing that fulfillment lies in the distance. But the river, for all its movement, never forgets its beginning. Beneath every current runs the memory of its source. The Buddha once said, "All streams lead to the ocean, but the ocean never overflows." In that saying lies a secret about life. No matter how far you wander, the path of return is already within you. The current that pulls you home is not a direction, it is awareness itself. There was once a potter who lived beside a river. Every morning he fetched water to mix with his clay-shaping bowls that were simple and strong. One year, a great drought came. The river dried to a trickle, and he could no longer work. In despair, he followed the empty riverbed upstream, hoping to find water. Days passed until finally he reached a small spring emerging from a rock. The sound of it, soft, persistent, moved him to tears. "So this," he whispered, "is where I've always begun." He cupped his hands and drank deeply. When he returned home, the river still slept, but his heart flowed again. In meditation, we do something similar. We follow the course of our restless thoughts backward, past desire, past fear, past the countless bends of habit, until we reach the spring of pure awareness, the place before thinking. There, everything begins again, fresh and untamed. The practice is not about becoming someone new, but remembering who you've always been before the currents of the world carried you away. The river never fights its course. It accepts the shape of every obstacle, the stone, the root, the bend, and transforms resistance into song. It doesn't deny the rock, it glides around it. So too can we move through difficulty, not by force, but by fluidity. Compassion is water's wisdom. It adapts without losing its nature. People often think strength means solidity, but true strength is found in movement. Water wears down mountains not by defiance, but by persistence. It teaches us that gentleness is not weakness. It is patience in motion. When anger arises, be like the river flow around it. Let it cool your heat. When grief arrives, let it wash through, not drown you. Feel it move, and it will eventually clear. There was a disciple who asked his teacher, "How can I stop being so restless?" The teacher led him to a riverbank and said, "Look." The surface shimmered with ripples. "Now touch it." The disciple reached out, disturbing the reflection of clouds. "Do you see?" said the teacher. The river was never truly still, but it was always flowing true. Your mind does not need to stop it, only needs to flow without grasping. We suffer because we resist movement. We cling to moments that were meant to pass, holding on to the laughter that has ended, the love that has changed, the youth that has gone. But the river cannot return upstream. Its beauty lies in its going, and yet paradoxically, every drop that leaves eventually returns to the source through rain, through mist, through time. Nothing is ever truly lost. In Buddhist thought, this is samsara. The endless cycle of flow and nirvana is not escape, but realization. The river and the ocean were never separate. Your life, with all its twists and turbulence, is not outside enlightenment. It is enlightenment unfolding. Think of how the river widens near the delta. There, the water slows, spreading into calm before it meets the sea. The river does not rush to merge. It opens, surrendering to vastness. In surrender, it fulfills its purpose not by ending, but by becoming part of something immeasurable. So too, peace is not the end of movement, but its perfect harmony. In daily life, this means learning to flow through the ordinary. When washing dishes, feel the water on your hands. It is the same element that carves canyons and feeds forests. When listening to someone's pain, let your heart widen like a river, making room for tributaries. When facing uncertainty, remember that even the murkiest water finds clarity when left undisturbed. There is a saying, "No one steps into the same river twice." True, but the river also never forgets the sky reflected upon it. Every wave carries the memory of light. Likewise, every breath you take, no matter how rushed, contains the memory of stillness. You cannot lose what you truly are. You can only forget to notice. Sometimes life will pull you through rapids, loss, illness, betrayal. You may tumble disoriented, gasping. But when you stop fighting the current and instead trust its direction, you discover that the river was never against you. Its turbulence was simply the terrain of transformation. You emerge not broken, but reshaped. At dusk, the river mirrors the horizon fire melting into silver. Sit by its edge, even if only in your mind, and listen. Beneath the surface chatter of waves, there is a hum, a pulse, the sound of return. It tells you gently, you are not separate from the water, nor from the source. Every breath, every tear, every act of letting go is part of the same endless flow. And when night comes and the stars scatter across the surface, know this, the river does not seek the moon, yet the moon always finds it. Likewise, when you stop seeking peace as a distant shore, peace comes quietly rippling through you, returning you drop by drop to your own boundless beginning. Night always begins the same way, with light surrendering itself. The sun does not argue with dusk, it simply bows. Yet we humans resist what the sky accepts so easily. We fear endings, forgetting that darkness is not the death of light, it is its renewal. Within every extinguished flame sleeps a spark waiting for the next dawn. In the Buddhist path, this rhythm of illumination and rest is known as balance. To burn without pause is to consume oneself. To hide from fire is to live cold. Wisdom is the art of tending one's own flame, bright enough to see, gentle enough to last. There was once a lantern maker who worked deep in a mountain village. People came from miles away for his lamps, whose light seemed to carry warmth beyond wax and oil. One winter, an apprentice asked, "Master, how do you make light that never flickers?" The old man smiled. "It flickers," he said, "but I listen to it." Each evening he would sit beside a lit lantern, adjusting the wick, shifting the glass, whispering to the flame until its breathing matched his own. A light, he said, stays steady when it is not afraid to dance. So, it is with us. Our minds are small fires trembling against the wind of the world. When we feed them with craving, they flare wildly. When we smother them with fear, they fade. But when we breathe with them mindfully, compassionately, they find their natural rhythm. Meditation is not the act of making the flame still. It is the art of watching it move without panic. There is an old truth: no candle lights itself. We awaken through contact, kindness offered, understanding received. A single spark passed from one to another multiplies without loss. Compassion is like that, the only thing that grows by giving. Every gentle act, every patient silence, every sincere apology is another hand shielding a light from the storm. In our modern haste, we forget to tend this inner flame. We chase achievement until our wick burns low. We call the exhaustion purpose, yet it is merely depletion. Even noble service without balance becomes a fire that consumes its bearer. The Buddha taught right effort, not as relentless striving, but as wise pacing. Rest is not idleness, it is the cooling that keeps the metal from cracking. Imagine a field at dusk, lanterns hanging from slender poles. They do not compete. Each glows according to its own fuel. Together, they make a constellation upon the earth. Such is the harmony of mindful living. You do not have to blaze to be meaningful. A small, steady light can guide countless travelers through the dark. Once a wanderer reached a monastery late at night. The monks had already retired, and the only illumination came from a single oil lamp left outside the gate. The wanderer hesitated, afraid to intrude. Then, seeing the lamp's calm, he felt his own fear ease. He lay down beside the gate and slept. At dawn, when the monks emerged, they found him smiling, whispering, "I dreamed I was the flame." The real teaching of that story lies not in miracles, but in reflection. We become what we dwell upon. When we dwell in fear, we become the shadow that flees. When we dwell in compassion, we become warmth itself. Life asks us constantly, what fire are you feeding? Even anger, if observed, reveals its light. It is passion without guidance, the heart's protest against perceived injustice. If you hold it carefully, without acting blindly, it transforms into clarity, the kind of fire that cooks rather than burns. To channel emotion is to give it purpose without violence. Like a hearth contained by stone, it can warm without destroying. In the same way, grief too is a sacred flame. It burns away illusion, showing how deeply we have loved. To grieve mindfully is to honor love's residue, not to drown in it. Light a candle for what was lost, and notice how it does not consume the room, but softens it. The warmth of remembrance is not the opposite of letting go. It is letting go, made tender. The heart's natural state is luminous. Beneath layers of confusion, every being carries a spark of awareness untouched by time. The task is not to invent it, but to uncover it. When meditation deepens, one begins to feel that light spreading from the chest and ease, a quiet radiance that asks for nothing. You realize then that peace was never outside you. It was only hidden beneath the smoke of wanting. In daily life, practice small illuminations. When irritation rises, pause and picture your breath as a hand adjusting the wick. When fatigue comes, step back before the flame gutters out. When joy appears, let it shine without gripping it. The candle does not fear melting, it fulfills itself through giving. But it does not rush to die. It burns with dignity, knowing every second of brightness is enough. And when your own night arrives, the inevitable dusk of body or circumstance, may you remember this truth: extinction is an illusion. The flame that goes out is not lost. It has merely changed form, joining the fire of countless stars. Your kindness, your awareness, your smallest good deeds, they do not vanish. They disperse, lighting paths you will never see. Sit quietly tonight and watch a candle if you can. Notice how it bends, how it steadies, how it brightens without sound. In that light lives your own story, fragile, radiant, impermanent, yet profoundly whole. You do not need to control it. You only need to keep it company. When dawn returns and you step into the day, carry that still flame inside you, not to boast, not to preach, but to illuminate gently wherever darkness forgets itself. That is all the Buddha ever asked of light, to be true to its nature. And in being so, it rests. Somewhere between what was and what will be lies a trembling moment we call now. It is the narrow bridge that every life must cross, the place where the past whispers behind us and the future hums ahead. Most of us rush across, eyes fixed on the far bank, never realizing that the bridge itself is sacred. In Buddhist teaching, the present moment is not merely a slice of time. It is reality itself, the only ground that truly exists. The past is memory, the future imagination, but now is the point where both dissolve. The Buddha called it the middle way, the art of walking between extremes. It is not a destination, but a balance, one foot in stillness, one in movement. There once lived a bridge builder who worked beside a canyon so wide that even the wind hesitated to cross. Travelers begged him to construct a path, but each attempt failed. The planks cracked, the ropes snapped. Finally, an old hermit came by and said, "You cannot build from only one side." The builder paused, "But how can I build from both?" The hermit pointed to the sky. "Do not forget the air between." The builder thought deeply. He began to weave his bridge not just with wood and rope, but with spaces, deliberate gaps that allowed the wind to pass. When it was finished, the bridge sang instead of breaking. So too must we build our inner bridge, the bridge between thought and silence, self and other doing and being. The strength of this bridge lies not in its materials, but in its spaces. Without stillness, wisdom cannot breathe through us. Every emotion, every challenge is a traveler trying to cross your bridge. Anger stomps, fear hesitates, joy dances. Your task is not to block the travelers, but to strengthen the span so that none of them collapse it. Mindfulness is the rope. Compassion is the plank. Each moment of awareness tightens the cords. Each act of kindness adds a beam. Over time, the crossing becomes steady, unshakable. We forget this when life sways. The storm of circumstance arrives, loss, uncertainty, change, and we clutch the rails in panic. But the bridge was built to move. If it were rigid, it would break. The enlightened heart, like that bridge, knows how to sway without falling. It trusts that flexibility is not weakness, but wisdom's design. Once a student told his teacher, "Master, I am torn between the person I was and the one I wish to become." The teacher nodded. "Then, be the bridge." The student frowned, but a bridge is stepped on. The teacher smiled. Yes, and yet it connects everything. To live compassionately is to allow others to pass through your kindness without possession. You are not diminished when you serve. You become a path. The bridge does not choose who crosses it. It simply bears them all. The Buddha walked this truth, offering wisdom freely unattached to whether it was accepted. The giving itself was his enlightenment. If you look closely, you will see that every meaningful act in your life has been a bridge, a word of comfort between strangers, a moment of forgiveness between generations, a deep breath between impulse and understanding. Even pain has its own bridge carrying you from illusion to truth. We build outer bridges through effort, but inner ones through presence. To meditate is to sit at the center of your own span, the still midpoint where all directions meet. Thoughts drift in like travelers. You greet them, then let them continue. You are both host and highway. Over time, the noise of footsteps becomes music, the sound of life moving through awareness. In the modern world, we often mistake rushing for living. We sprint across bridges without noticing the view. But pause midway, and you will see both banks, the stories you've outgrown behind you, the possibilities still forming ahead. In that pause lies freedom, the realization that you are not confined to either shore. You are the open space connecting them. When conflict arises, remember the bridge. Between your reaction and your response lies a breath, the single plank of mindfulness that can bear the weight of any anger. Step onto it. Wait there. You will feel the trembling quiet itself. This is how compassion enters, not as an idea, but as the steadying hand that keeps the crossing safe. The bridge also reminds us of impermanence. One day, all structures fall, the wooden, the stone, the flesh, the ego. But the act of connection remains. The kindness you gave will outlive the form that carried it. Even when your body returns to dust, the love that passed through you continues like wind moving across the valley. At twilight, when the day folds into the night, notice how the horizon becomes a bridge between light and shadow. Neither wins, both merge. Life too is such merging, birth and death, gain and loss, joy and sorrow. They are not opposites, but halves of a crossing that leads us deeper into understanding. And when your own steps grow slow, when you feel the trembling of uncertainty beneath your feet, do not despair. Look down, the bridge holds. It always has. It was built from the threads of countless breaths, from moments of forgiveness you didn't think mattered, from patience you offered when no one saw. Each silent act has become wood and rope and song. As you reach the far shore, you will see that there was never truly another side. The bridge was never between two worlds. It was the world itself, alive and listening under your feet. So walk gently, walk gratefully, and leave behind a path strong enough for others to cross in peace. There is a kind of freedom that cannot be owned, a wisdom that moves quietly through all things and belongs to none. The Buddha called it anatta, the truth of no fixed self. It is the wind's way of living, touching every leaf, whispering through every door, yet never saying, "This is mine." We humans build walls, names, and stories to anchor ourselves. We gather possessions, titles, opinions, as if to prove we exist. Yet the tighter we grasp, the less air remains inside. Stillness becomes suffocation. The Dharma teaches that true peace comes not from defining the self, but from softening it, allowing the wind of life to pass through without obstruction. There was once a flute maker who crafted his instruments from hollow reeds found near a lake. One day, a traveler asked, "Why make music from emptiness?" The old man smiled. "Because the wind cannot sing through what is full. So too with the heart. When it is crowded with pride, fear, or the need to be right, no melody of compassion can flow through." Emptiness in the Buddhist sense is not loss, but readiness. The open space through which love can travel freely. Imagine the wind moving over a desert. It shapes dunes, carries seeds, cools skin, erases footprints. It is both creator and eraser, builder and destroyer, and yet it seeks no recognition. It never says, "I made this." It simply moves. This is the nature of awakened action effort, without attachment, doing without claiming. In a monastery by the sea, a young monk once complained to his teacher, "I feel like I don't know who I am anymore." The teacher led him outside and said, "Listen." The wind swept through the courtyard, rattling bamboo, fluttering robes. "Does the wind know who it is?" asked the teacher. "No," said the monk, "but it touches everything." The teacher nodded. "Then learn from that. To live like the wind is to participate in everything while belonging to nothing. It means caring deeply, yet holding lightly, helping without ownership, loving without control. The Buddha called this upekkha, equanimity, the balance of heart that neither clings nor rejects. When you let go of the need to define yourself, life becomes vast. You are no longer a single gust fighting the storm. You are the movement of the whole atmosphere. In that realization, suffering softens. Pain still visits, but it passes through instead of taking residence. The ego, however, is clever. It hides in subtle forms in the pride of humility, in the need to be spiritual, in the secret wish to be praised for letting go. But the wind laughs gently at such efforts. It does not perform freedom. It is freedom. It moves on before the dust can settle into identity. Consider the journey of fragrance. When incense burns, the smoke rises and disappears, yet its presence lingers in the air long after the flame is gone. That is how awakened living works, to leave essence, not possession, to leave kindness, not a signature. In the world of commerce and noise, where everyone builds brands of self, this teaching feels almost rebellious. To be no one is a radical act of peace. It does not mean erasing individuality. It means releasing the illusion that individuality is all that exists. You still play your note, but you understand it is part of a greater song. Once a poet climbed a hill to seek inspiration. The wind howled around him, tugging at his robes. Annoyed, he shouted, "Leave me alone so I can write." The wind replied, not in words, but in a long, sweeping silence that cleared his mind. The poet suddenly saw that the wind had written the poem already, in the movement of grass, in the shifting of clouds, in his own heartbeat. He walked down the hill empty-handed, yet full of everything. This emptiness is not a void, but a vessel. When you stop grasping for identity, you become a channel for the world's music. Words, gestures, ideas flow through effortlessly. Creativity, compassion, insight all arise naturally when the self stops interrupting. When anger or fear visits, Notice how they always begin with a story about, I was wronged, I will fail, I must win. The wind whispers, let the I rest. Without that center of contraction, emotion dissolves like smoke in open air. The world remains the same, yet lighter, more breathable. Freedom is not found by leaving the world, but by moving through it unburdened. The enlightened ones were not statues carved in caves. They were travelers. The Buddha himself walked constantly carrying nothing, teaching by presence alone. His peace did not depend on silence or isolation. It was the stillness within movement, the calm at the center of the breeze. Try this when you walk today. Feel the wind touch your skin. Notice that you cannot see it, yet you trust it completely. Let that trust extend inward. You do not need to see your soul to know it moves. Let thoughts pass through like gusts, each bringing something, each taking something, none belonging to you. One day, even this body will become like dust, lifted by wind scattered into the fields, the sea, the stars. But you will not be lost. You will simply return to the dance that has been happening since before your birth. The boundless movement of awareness through form and space. When you finally understand this, fear dissolves. The question, who am I, becomes as gentle as a breeze through open windows. You smile because you realize that to be the wind is to be everywhere, touching everything, leaving no trace, yet transforming all. And in that smile, you have already arrived. Each life, though it may appear separate, is a strand in a vast tapestry stretching beyond our imagining. From the distance of eternity, the threads shimmer, intersecting, diverging, crossing again. Joy gleams beside sorrow, love beside loss. And together, they form a pattern that no single strand can see alone. This is the truth of interbeing, the Buddha's teaching, that nothing exists by itself. Every heartbeat echoes through countless others. We often believe we are the weavers of our destiny, but in truth, we are also the threads being woven. The loom of existence moves with a rhythm older than memory, and every meeting, every heartbreak, every act of kindness tightens or softens the weave. There was once a tailor known for stitching robes so seamless they seemed to have no beginning or end. One day, a wealthy merchant brought him the finest silk and said, "Make me a garment that will last forever." The tailor worked in silence for weeks. When the merchant returned, the tailor handed him not a robe, but a single spool of thread. The merchant fumed. "This is not what I asked for." The tailor bowed and said, "All garments unravel, but the thread continues in each new form." In that parable lies the secret of life. What endures is not the form we wear, our roles, our successes, our sorrows, but the thread of awareness that passes through them all. The self that changes is the robe. The consciousness observing is the thread. The Buddha once said, "In this fathom-long body, the world arises and ceases." He meant that the entire tapestry of existence, birth, death, joy, and grief, is woven through the loom of our perception. When you understand this, separation begins to dissolve. The stranger's tears are not foreign. They glisten on the same fabric that carries your laughter. In meditation, we begin to see this more clearly. Thoughts come and go like colors changing on the loom. Some are bright with memory, others dark with fear, but beneath them runs the same constant motion, the awareness that notices the thread that does not break. When the mind grows quiet, you can almost feel it humming through you, connecting you to everything that breathes. Once a student asked a master, "If all is connected, why do we feel alone?" The master lifted a spider's web, glistening with dew. Because he said we look only at the droplets, not the threads between them. The modern world magnifies the droplets, each person a bright reflection on a screen, each thought an isolated flash. We forget the invisible lines binding us, yet even now unseen hands are weaving. A farmer in another land grows the rice you eat. A stranger's invention lights your room. A child's laughter across the street softens your heart. Life is not a collection of stories, but a single story told through many mouths. To live wisely, then, is to move as a conscious thread, aware of what we add to the pattern. Every action, no matter how small, pulls at the fabric somewhere. A harsh word tightens it into knots. A kind one loosens it into harmony. This is karma, not as punishment, but as texture, the quality of the weave shaped by each choice. Consider how a tapestry is created. The weaver alternates tension and release. Pull too tight and the cloth warps. Too loose and it unravels. So too must we learn the balance of effort and ease. Work, love, and even spiritual practice must be done with gentleness, or the fabric tears. There was a woman who spent her days repairing old quilts. Her hands were weathered, her eyesight dim, but her stitches were flawless. When asked how she worked so patiently, she replied, "I never mend the cloth. I mend the story that holds it." Each patch, she explained, was a memory honored, not hidden. She knew that beauty was not in the perfection of the weave, but in its endurance, the way it gathered life's phrase into meaning. You too are a mender of stories. Every time you forgive, you repair the unseen cloth. Every time you listen without judgment, another rip closes. And when you suffer, know this pain is not the end of the pattern. It is the place where new color enters. The ancient texts say that when a bodhisattva acts, their compassion ripples through countless worlds. Perhaps this is not mythology, but metaphor. Perhaps every gentle act sends vibrations through the cosmic fabric, changing the pattern in ways too subtle to measure. Even a single smile can travel through the weave like light through silk, warming lives you will never meet. When death comes, and it will as night follows day, the thread does not vanish. It passes on, intertwining with new stories, new forms. Nothing is lost, only rewoven. The robe changes, the cloth endures. To fear death is to forget that we have never been separate strands. So tonight, as you sit in stillness, imagine yourself as that thread, slender, yet unbreakable, stretching through lifetimes, connecting stars and rivers, strangers and lovers, moments and eternities. Feel how each breath pulls you deeper into the tapestry, how the world hums softly around you, a single vast fabric alive with light. When you rise, let this remembrance guide you. Speak gently, walk slowly, mend what is torn. You do not need to see the whole design to trust its beauty. You are already part of it, the thread that both holds and is held, weaving quietly through the endless loom of time. There are crossroads that maps cannot show. You stand before them when a decision burns quietly inside, whether to stay or leave to speak, or remain silent to forgive or hold on. No signposts point the way, and logic trembles under the weight of uncertainty. It is here in this mist between what you know and what you fear that the truest guide appears, not outside, but within. The Buddha called it prajna, the wisdom that arises from direct seeing, not from books or teachers, but from the silent compass of the awakened heart. It does not shout. It waits beneath the noise, pulsing like a steady rhythm behind the chaos of thought. When we stop seeking answers in the distance, we begin to feel it moving, subtle as breath, precise as truth. Once a sailor lost his way in the open sea. The stars were hidden by clouds, and his instruments had broken. Days passed, and despair thickened like fog. Exhausted, he lay on the deck and closed his eyes. Beneath the creak of the wood and the hiss of the waves, he felt something of faint vibration, rhythmic and alive. It was his own heartbeat. If this still beats, he thought perhaps it knows where to go. He adjusted his sails, following an intuition he could not name. At dawn, the fog lifted. He was near shore. So too, the heart carries its own navigation, not toward comfort, but toward authenticity. When you act from that still center, the path unfolds naturally, even in darkness. But if you chase direction from fear or pride, every choice becomes another storm. The mind, clever and restless, often drowns this inner compass with calculation. It demands certainty, control, reward. But wisdom is born from humility, the willingness to stand still long enough for the truth to reveal itself. As the Buddha said, "Be a lamp unto yourself." The light he spoke of was not external knowledge. It was the flame of discernment that flickers in each of us when we dare to be silent. Imagine standing in a forest at night. You have no torch, no moonlight, only the scent of pine and the hush of unseen wings. You take one step and the ground beneath it appears. Take another and the next piece of earth emerges. That is how the inner compass works. It does not illuminate the entire path, only the step you must take now. Faith in its purest form is the courage to keep walking with limited light. A student once asked his teacher, "How do I know if I am following the right path?" The teacher held out a bowl of water and dropped a small stone into it. Ripples spread outward. When your choice brings stillness after movement, the teacher said you are close. This stillness is not the absence of challenge, but the absence of inner war. When an action aligns with truth, it carries no aftertaste of resistance. The body feels lighter, the breath deeper, even if the outcome remains uncertain. The compass of the heart speaks not in words, but in resonance, a quiet yes that needs no argument. Modern life, however, teaches us to trust noise over intuition. We fill every pause with data, every silence with opinions, every hesitation with haste. Yet wisdom lives in the intervals, the space between thoughts, the breath between decisions. To hear the compass, we must first stop talking over it. One evening, a monk asked an elder, "Why does my meditation feel empty? I hear nothing." The elder replied, "Perhaps the compass is already pointing, but you are waiting for it to sing." Guidance rarely arrives as revelation. It comes as a subtle leaning, a soft pull toward kindness, honesty, patience. It asks not for grand gestures, but for sincerity in small ones. Over time, the more you honor this inner direction, the clearer it becomes. Each time you act from compassion instead of impulse, the needle steadies. Each time you choose truth over convenience, the field of confusion weakens. This is not morality imposed from outside, it is harmony discovered within. When the compass falters, as it sometimes will do, not despair. Even magnets lose orientation when shaken. Settle, wait, breathe. The earth's field truth itself will quietly realign you. The Buddha's wisdom is not an external commandment, but a gentle gravity pulling each being back toward balance. The compass of the heart also teaches discernment in love. True compassion does not mean saying yes to everything. Sometimes the kindest direction is away from harm, from deceit, from situations that starve the soul. The same inner stillness that tells you when to stay will also tell you when to go. Both are expressions of care. There was once a craftsman who carved compasses from stone. People mocked him, saying stone cannot point north. He replied, "Maybe not, but if you hold it long enough, it remembers your warmth." Our hearts, too, remember the warmth of truth, even when reason forgets. When death approaches, sages say the final clarity returns. The needle swings home without hesitation. In that last breath, all the detours dissolve, and the compass points toward boundless peace. But you need not wait for that moment. Every day offers small chances to follow it when you choose honesty over convenience, forgiveness over pride, stillness over reaction. Tonight, as you lie quietly, place a hand on your chest. Feel the pulse beneath your palm. That rhythm has never betrayed you. Beneath every confusion, it beats with the wisdom of 1,000 lives. Trust it. It will not lead you astray. For the heart, when unclouded, does not merely find the way, it is the way. Every seeker eventually discovers that the path they have been walking outwards begins one day to curve back toward themselves. After all the temples visited, books read, teachers met, a quiet realization dawns: the sacred door you've been searching for has always been inside your own chest. The Buddha spoke of this inward door as Dhammadvara, the gate of direct experience. To enter it, you don't need keys of doctrine or rituals of worthiness. You only need the willingness to stop running. For truth never hides. It simply waits for you to turn around. There was once a wanderer who heard rumors of a temple said to contain the secret of eternal peace. He traveled through jungles and deserts, crossed borders and lifetimes, until finally, in old age, he reached the mountain where the temple stood. Its gates were closed. A monk sitting nearby asked, "Old one, what do you seek?" The traveler answered, "I've come to enter the temple." The monk smiled softly. "Then close your eyes. The door opens only inward." And so it is with awakening. We search endlessly for the divine in distant horizons, while the silence of our own being quietly hums the answer. We imagine enlightenment as a destination, but it is really a homecoming, the return to what never left. When you first sit in stillness, the inward door seems locked. The handle, your attention feels stiff with neglect. The hinges creak with old fears, guilt, shame, regret, desire. But patience is the oil that loosens them. Each breath taken with awareness softens the rust until the door begins to move. And behind it lies not thunderous revelation, but gentle clarity light spilling across the floor of your consciousness like morning through curtains. In a world obsessed with opening every external door, opportunity, recognition, success, we often forget that the most vital entrance is the one leading inward. To open that door is to discover that what you thought was missing was never gone. It was only waiting behind noise. The inward door reveals a paradox. The closer you move toward yourself, the more the idea of yourself dissolves. Inside, there is no throne for the ego, no crown for accomplishment, only a vast breathing stillness. It is both empty and full, empty of mine, full of is. A student once asked his master, "What will I find if I open the door within?" The master replied, "Nothing you can hold and everything you need." Entering inwardly requires courage, because the first thing you meet is your own shadow. The mind, unguarded by distractions, begins to reveal its old recordings, resentments, replayed wounds, unhealed attachments, clinging like ivy to the heart. But these are not punishments. They are invitations. The door does not open around pain, but through it. Only by meeting what we fear can we pass into freedom. Consider the potter's kiln. The heat that hardens clay into usefulness is the same that threatens to crack it. Inwardly, the fire of awareness purifies the mind, but only if we remain still within it. Avoidance creates fracture. Presence creates form. Modern life teaches us to look outward for validation, yet the inward door asks for surrender instead of applause. You cannot carry your masks inside. They will not fit through the frame. The moment you release them, your titles, your stories, your defenses, the door swings wide, and you realize that it was never locked, only obstructed by what you refused to drop. Inside, there is a silence so vast that it feels like listening to the world before it began. Thoughts may still appear, like visitors knocking, but they no longer command entry. You can greet them kindly and let them pass. This is meditation in its truest form, hospitality without attachment. A young monk once complained, "Every time I sit, I face a storm of thoughts." His teacher replied, "Then become the house that welcomes storms. The rain will clean your floors." The inward door does not close out the world. It opens to a deeper participation with it. Once you've entered this space, everything changes quietly. Ordinary moments, washing dishes, walking, breathing, become altars. You begin to sense the sacred pulse behind every act, the golden thread running through dust and sunlight alike. The door does not transport you to another realm. It reveals the holiness of this one. But remember, the door opens only now. You cannot enter yesterday's silence or tomorrow's peace. The present moment is the threshold, and your attention is the key turning in its lock. At times, you may drift away again, forgetting this simple truth. That too is part of the rhythm. The door never closes behind you. It waits patient as compassion itself. Each breath is an invitation to step through once more. At the end of all searching, the seeker bows to what was always here. In that bow, the separation dissolves. The door, the seeker, and the silence inside become one unbroken space. When you finally rest there, you understand why the Buddha smiled under the Bodhi tree, not because he discovered something new, but because he realized there was nowhere else to go. And in that realization, the heart whispers the simplest of truths. The way in is the way out. The door you open is yourself opening, and what you find beyond it is the world seen at last as home. When the world grows loud, our first instinct is to speak louder still, to defend, to explain, to make ourselves heard. Yet the louder we speak, the less we truly listen. The Buddha once compared words to arrows once released. They cannot be recalled. But he also spoke of listening as a mirror, quiet, clear, capable of revealing truth without distortion. Every sound in the universe is an echo. The wind through branches, the cry of a newborn, even your own thoughts reverberating inside the skull. They are all waves returning from somewhere. But we forget this and take echoes for beginnings, mistaking reaction for understanding. There was once a bellmaker who lived by a cliff overlooking the sea. He spent his life forging great temple bells, yet he could never capture the perfect tone. One day, weary from work, he fell asleep beside the shore. As he dreamed, he heard a distant hum, the deep resonance of waves against stone. When he awoke, he realized the sound came not from the sea, but from within his own chest. From that day, he stopped hammering and began listening. His next bell, cast in silence, sang the sound of the ocean itself. So it is with wisdom. It does not come from shaping the world to echo our voice, but from letting our voice dissolve into the song already being sung. To listen deeply is to step aside from the self. It is not passive. It is a form of surrender that awakens intelligence. When you truly listen, your attention becomes a vessel into which life pours its meanings unfiltered. You begin to hear not only words, but the spaces between them, the trembling in a friend's pause, the fatigue behind laughter, the longing hidden in anger. In such listening, compassion is born. The Buddha called this karuna, the listening heart. It does not analyze, it feels into the root of things. When someone suffers, the listening heart hears not the complaint, but the wound seeking air. When someone rejoices, it hears the gratitude beneath their song. This kind of listening is prayer without religion. Our age, filled with opinions, rarely listens. We respond before the other has finished speaking, preparing our defense, sharpening our retort. Even when we appear silent, our minds chatter like marketplaces. But silence in the Buddhist sense is not absence of sound. It is the space that allows sound to be heard. A young monk once asked Master, "How can I hear truth when everyone speaks differently?" The Master replied, "Listen for what does not change between them." The monk frowned. "What is that?" The Master pointed to the horizon. The silence before each word. That silence is not empty. It is awareness itself, the great field in which all voices rise and fall. Every conversation, every argument, every moment of thought is a wave upon that sea. If you learn to rest as the sea, not the wave, every echo becomes teaching. In meditation, this becomes vivid. You sit and the mind begins its chorus. Memories, worries, fragments of conversation. Instead of fighting them, you listen as if they were rain tapping on the roof. Gradually, you notice that behind the noise, there is a still hum, a resonance untouched by thought. That hum is consciousness listening to itself. To listen deeply is to heal separation. When two beings truly hear one another, the illusion of distance melts. The listener becomes mirror, and the speaker sees themselves clearly for the first time. Often that is all healing requires, not advice, not correction, but presence so attentive it feels like love. A story tells of two monks who quarreled for years. One day, a great teacher visited. Each tried to explain their side. The teacher said nothing, only looked at each of them in turn, and then closed his eyes. The monks, puzzled, also fell silent. In that shared quiet, the anger between them unraveled. Later, one whispered, "I think he let us hear our own echo." The more we listen, the more we realize that even nature speaks this way. The forest does not shout. It converses in rhythm, the rustle of leaves replying to wind, the bird answering the dawn. To walk through it is to step inside a living dialogue. The wise do not demand the forest to explain itself. They walk softly, letting the echo teach them humility. In relationships, the practice of listening becomes an offering. When you listen without agenda, you give others permission to be whole. You no longer see them as extensions of your desire or fear, but as voices of the same vast echo. The heart widens and judgment falls away. But perhaps the deepest listening is inward. Beneath all external sounds hums the quiet echo of being, the remembrance that you exist, that you are aware. When you turn toward it, you find that awareness has no origin and no boundary. It listens endlessly because it is listening. This is what the ancients meant when they said, meditation is hearing the soundless sound. It is not mystical poetry. It is direct experience, the echo of eternity reverberating inside your momentary form. Try this tonight. Before sleep, sit in darkness. Do not strain to silence the room. Instead, let every sound arrive, the hum of electricity, the distant traffic, your own breathing. Let them layer until they form one continuous tone. Then, notice the awareness holding them all. That awareness has been listening since before you were born. When you wake tomorrow, bring that same quality of listening to the world. Hear each voice as a wave, each moment as music. Speak less, listen more, and in listening, allow yourself to be changed. For enlightenment perhaps is not a thunderous revelation, but the simplest act of attention, the echo learning at last to listen. There are seasons when the sky forgets its color. Days fold into gray upon gray, and everything you touch feels heavy with dampness. Plans, delayed words, misunderstood hearts, weary from waiting for light. These are the times when faith is not a grand conviction, but a small lantern cupped between trembling hands. The Buddha never promised that the path would be free of storms. He said only this: if you guard the light within, even rain becomes your teacher. For rain does not destroy fire. It teaches it how to glow without arrogance. Once there was a traveler who carried a lantern through a long mountain pass. The wind howled, rain lashed, and mud clung to his boots. At one point, he stumbled and dropped the light into a puddle. He knelt, believing the flame gone. But when he lifted the lantern, a faint ember still breathed beneath the glass. He sheltered it with his palms, walking slower, letting the storm rage without resistance. At dawn, when he reached the village, his lantern still burned. "How did you keep it alive?" someone asked. The traveler smiled. "By not fighting the rain. I walked with it." That is the essence of endurance on the spiritual path, not defiance, but cooperation with impermanence. We think resilience means hardening, yet true strength is flexibility. The reed that bends does not break. The flame that dances survives the wind. In meditation, we face this lesson intimately. Thoughts arrive like raindrops, ceaseless, sometimes cold. The beginner panics, trying to stop them. The wise practitioner learns to let them fall. Awareness becomes the lantern glass, transparent, protective, allowing the flame to continue undisturbed. When despair comes, it does not ask permission. It seeps through cracks, and confidence extinguishes plans, muffles song. Yet even despair carries the sound of rain, the rhythm that keeps life in motion. If you listen closely beneath the downpour, there is a heartbeat, a pulse that says, "Still here, still alive." The lantern symbolizes that pulse. It is the reminder that even the smallest light defies absolute darkness. You do not need to banish the storm. You only need to carry enough brightness to see the next step. A monk once asked his teacher, "How do I know if my practice is working?" The teacher lit a candle and placed it before him. "Close your eyes," he said. "Do you still see the glow?" The monk nodded. "Then the practice is working." Sometimes the flame is strong, radiant with clarity, compassion, and ease. At other times it flickers, barely visible beneath the weight of grief or confusion. Both are the same light. The Buddha's enlightenment did not make him immune to pain. It made him intimate with it. To awaken is not to escape the storm, but to recognize your own reflection in every drop of rain. The storm will pass, as all things do. But while it lasts, it polishes the soul. Each drop cleans the soot of pride. Each thunderclap shakes loose the illusions we cling to. Without the storm, we would never know how steady our lantern truly is. Modern life makes us believe that calm means the absence of difficulty. But calm in the Dharma sense is presence amid difficulty. It is the hand that steadies the flame rather than curses the wind. This is upekkha, equanimity, the art of standing in the rain without forgetting the light. If you look closely, rain itself is luminous. Every drop catches a fragment of the sky, turning descent into brilliance. Likewise, Every challenge contains a fragment of awakening. Pain becomes insight when met with awareness. Loss becomes compassion when carried gently. There was once a teacher who kept a cracked bowl on his altar. "Why do you use this instead of a perfect one?" a visitor asked. The teacher replied, "Because light passes through the cracks." The storm is not an interruption of your peace. It is what allows your light to reach others. When you have walked through darkness, your presence becomes a shelter for those still in it. In moments of exhaustion, when the lantern feels too heavy, remember you are not the only traveler. All beings carry their own small lights. When paths cross, a miracle happens. Flames reflect, multiply, and the night grows less lonely. Compassion is not one lamp rescuing another. It is the realization that we all walk beneath the same rain. The Buddha's teachings often return to this simple truth. The flame of awareness is self-sustaining when fed by mindfulness. Even when you forget it, it does not die. It only waits beneath the ashes of distraction. One conscious breath is enough to relight it. Tonight, if life feels too wet, too uncertain, too dark, sit quietly. Cup your breath like a lantern. Inhale softly, fuel. Exhale slowly, flame. Let your heartbeat become the rhythm of the rain. Notice how, without effort, both begin to move together. The storm does not end, but it no longer frightens you, because something inside you remembers every downpour ends in clearing. Every soaked field becomes green again. Every flickering light, if tended with care, becomes sunrise. So walk, traveler, even through the rain. Guard the flame not from the storm, but through it. And one day, you will realize that the rain was never against you. It was only teaching you how to shine. We often think the path to awakening lies somewhere far ahead, marked by milestones of clarity and grand moments of revelation. But the truth whispered by countless teachers and confirmed in every breath is far simpler. The path is not found. It is made one step at a time. Each movement of awareness, each small act of kindness, each moment of restraint or forgiveness lays a stone beneath your feet. The road unfolds only as you walk. Looking too far ahead, you see nothing but mist. Looking too far behind you, stumble over your own doubt. But when you place one steady step in this present moment, the earth appears to meet you. There was once a monk who asked his teacher, "Where does the path begin?" The teacher pointed to the ground beneath the monk's feet and said, "Right where you are standing. But it will not exist until you start walking." This is the paradox of practice. We search for a trail, yet the trail depends on our steps. The Buddha did not hand us a map. He showed us how to move with attention. When he said walk the middle way, he meant not only moral balance, but also intimacy with each footfall, the awareness that the journey and the destination are the same act repeated with mindfulness. Imagine a forest after rain. The leaves shimmer, the air smells of renewal, and the ground is soft beneath your feet. Every step leaves an impression, but no footprint lasts for long. The forest slowly reclaims its surface, erasing your mark, as if to remind you that the path is for walking, not owning. In meditation, this truth becomes clear. Each breath is a step. Inhale, lift. Exhale, land. The mind wanders and you bring it back again and again. The ego complains, "I am not getting anywhere," yet awareness smiles, knowing that nowhere is exactly where peace resides. Progress is not a straight line, but a spiral that deepens with every return. Once a traveler met an old hermit sitting beside a river. "How far to enlightenment?" the traveler asked. The hermit looked at the current and replied, "Cross here." The traveler hesitated. "But there is no bridge." The hermit said, then each step must become one. The traveler stepped into the water, feeling for stones beneath the surface. One by one, the river gave him footing. When he reached the other side, he turned to thank the hermit, but the hermit had already vanished, as if absorbed by the path itself. Life is much like that river crossing. We want certainty before we move, but certainty comes only through movement. The stone appears because you dared to step. Faith is not blind, it is tactile. You feel it underfoot each time you trust the next breath, each time you meet fear with curiosity instead of resistance. The Buddha compared diligent practice to drawing water from a deep well. You cannot know how close you are to the spring, so you must keep lowering the bucket with patience. Some days it comes up dry. Other days a few drops glisten at the bottom. But if you keep drawing one morning, the rope will tremble with the fullness of the well, and you will realize the water was there all along. In our hurried world, we glorify speed, but the path has no shortcuts. It unfolds at the pace of sincerity. Walking fast does not bring you closer. Walking aware does. Even a single mindful step can hold the universe if taken without distraction. Try this practice when you walk slow down until your body and breath move together. Feel the texture of the ground, the coolness, the resistance, the gift of support. With each step, silently say, arriving. With the next, here. In time, you'll notice that the destination vanishes. You are no longer going somewhere. You are simply arriving endlessly. Every being you meet walks a different road, yet all paths are stitched together by the same fabric of impermanence. You cross others for a time, share a section of the trail, then part ways. Some leave footprints on your heart. Others pass like shadows. None of it is accident. Each encounter is a stone in your path placed exactly where it must be. There was once a gardener who built a walkway through his orchard, not in a straight line, but weaving among trees. When asked why, he said, "Because the wind doesn't walk straight, and neither does life. A path that curves teaches you to look around." Our journeys, too, are full of bends that reveal unexpected beauty, the kindness of a stranger, the lesson in a mistake, the grace of a moment forgiven. Sometimes the path disappears entirely, a loss, a betrayal, a silence so deep you cannot hear your own faith. In those times, remember the lesson of the forest floor. Even when covered in leaves, the trail still lies beneath. Trust your next step. The ground has not forgotten you. When you grow weary, rest. The Buddha himself paused under trees, not as defeat, but as reverence. The path is not punishment, it is invitation. Sit, breathe, let the wind continue the journey for a while. You will find that the way waits patiently, and when your final day arrives, you will look back and realize something profound. There was never one path. Each breath, each choice, each act of love was its own pilgrimage. The footprints you left were not markers of where you've been, but blossoms of where awareness bloomed. So walk gently, traveler. Do not rush to arrive. Each step is already sacred, each moment already home. The path is not ahead, it is beneath you, being created with every heartbeat. And if ever you wonder whether you are lost, pause and listen. The earth underfoot will whisper what it has whispered to all who have walked before you. Continue. You are exactly where the path becomes itself. Every seeker at some quiet point begins to feel a strange contradiction, a longing to dissolve into the vastness of life, and yet a fear of losing what they call me. The Buddha named this paradox the root of suffering, the clinging to form, the grasping at individuality, even while yearning for union. But he also revealed a truth both simple and luminous. The ocean is not outside the drop, The ocean is within it. We are not waves looking for water. We are water temporarily shaped into waves. Our names, our stories, our triumphs and griefs. These are the movements of form, momentary curves on the infinite sea. When the wave forgets its source, it feels lonely. When it remembers, it becomes free, even as it rises and falls. There was once a pearl diver who spent his life searching for the rarest gem beneath the sea. One morning, as he descended into deep water, his reflection shimmered on the surface above. For a brief instant, he thought it was another diver. He waved, but the figure did not respond. When he surfaced, he realized it had always been himself, both seeker and sought. In his laughter, the sea itself seemed to echo. He never searched again, for he understood that the pearl had always been the seeing. So too with enlightenment, it is not a treasure hidden at the bottom of life, but the awareness that has been diving all along. In meditation, when the boundaries of self begin to soften the mind, first panics. If I let go of who I am, it whispers what will be left. But slowly, as breath deepens and the chatter fades, you notice something miraculous in the space, where identity dissolves, peace expands. The less you hold, the more you contain. Imagine a drop of water poised on the tip of a leaf after rain. It trembles, reflecting the entire sky in its small curve. To the drop, the sky seems trapped within it, but when it falls into the pond below, it discovers that it was never separate from what it mirrored. Its fall is not death, it is completion. This is the truth of anatta non-self. The Buddha did not preach annihilation, he offered liberation. To see that I is only a temporary eddy in the stream of consciousness is to be released from fear. What can die when it was never separate to begin with? Our suffering, then, is the refusal to merge. We hold our edges tight, our opinions, our histories, our hurts, afraid that surrender means erasure. Yet surrender in the Dharma sense is not vanishing but expansion. When the drop opens, it does not disappear, it becomes ocean. A student once asked his teacher, "How can I experience oneness?" The teacher handed him a cup of water and said, "Pour it into the river." The student obeyed. "Now," said the teacher, "find your cup again." The beauty of that teaching lies in its tenderness. We spend our lives protecting the cup, polishing it, labeling it self. But the water within it, awareness, was never confined by its vessel. Once released, it rejoins the endless flow, unburdened by boundaries. In everyday life, this truth expresses itself as compassion. When you stop clinging to me, the wall between me and you dissolves. Another's joy becomes your own. Another's pain stirs your empathy instead of defense. Compassion is the natural fragrance of the ocean, realizing it was never many, only one. To live this truth does not mean to abandon individuality, but to wear it lightly. The ocean still waves, but it no longer forgets its depth. You can laugh, work, love, and mourn while knowing all are passing movements of the same great water. Once a painter tried to capture the sea at sunset. For years he mixed colors, painted waves, erased them, began again. One day he sat silently before the horizon, brush unused. A friend approached and asked, "Why have you stopped?" The painter smiled. "Because I have finally understood to paint the ocean perfectly, I must let the brush dissolve." When you stop trying to contain life, life begins to move through you with effortless grace. Decisions become lighter, relationships softer, fear less persuasive. You no longer need to defend the drop. You trust the sea. In meditation, try resting in this awareness. Sit quietly and imagine your breath as waves rising, breaking, receding. Notice how each inhale shapes the sense of I, and each exhale returns it to vastness. Between them, there is a pause, the still depth beneath motion. That pause is the ocean remembering itself. Sometimes you may resist feeling the pull to solidify again, to claim to control. That's natural. The wave cannot help but rise, but even as it does, let it know I am water, always water. Then even the rising becomes serene because falling is no longer feared. Death too is nothing but a returning to source. The wave bows to the shore and vanishes not in tragedy, but in truth. Its rhythm continues, invisibly reshaping clouds, rain rivers, bodies, and tears. When you understand this, mourning turns into reverence. Nothing that ever lived is gone. It has simply changed its shape of being. In our everyday world, we forget this vast belonging. We say my house, my job, my time, as if ownership could secure meaning. But each thing you think you own is borrowed from the same ocean, and each will return to it. Even your breath is on loan from the sky. Recognizing this does not diminish life. It enriches it with gratitude. So when you drink water, pause for a moment and see it as yourself meeting yourself. When you look into someone's eyes, recognize the same sea looking back. When you touch the soil, the tree, the wind, know that all are extensions of your own essence. You are not a fragment drifting through space. You are the entire ocean, momentarily tasting itself as a drop. And one day, when you dissolve fully, when the drop merges without fear, you will not be lost. You will simply be everywhere, whispering through every wave I never left. Somewhere deep beneath the soil, where no sound of daylight reaches a seed, lies still. It does not yet know what sky means, nor what wind feels like. All it knows is darkness, pressure, and waiting. To an untrained eye, it appears dead. But the wise understand this is not the end. This is the beginning, disguised as stillness. The Buddha once compared enlightenment to a lotus rising from the mud. But before the lotus blooms, it begins as a seed buried unseen, wrapped in uncertainty. That stage too is sacred. In the quiet weight of soil, the seed learns the first lesson of awakening patience. There was once a farmer who carried a pouch of seeds every spring. One year in haste, he planted them too early, and frost claimed them all. The next season, he waited too long, and drought arrived before the roots took hold. Finally, an old woman told him, "Do not plant when you wish to see growth. Plant when the earth is ready to receive it." He followed her advice, and that year, the field became gold. So it is with the human heart. We try to force growth to heal before we have truly grieved to love, before we have forgiven to let go, before we have understood. But spiritual unfolding obeys its own timing. You cannot rush transformation. You can only prepare the soil. Meditation is this quiet cultivation. You sit and nothing seems to happen. Thoughts sprout and wither. Doubt creeps in like weeds, yet beneath the surface roots are forming tiny, invisible threads of stability, reaching deeper into awareness. The moment of bloom will come, but only if you trust the unseen. There was a disciple who complained to his teacher, "I have meditated for years and found no light." The teacher led him to a field at dusk and pointed to the horizon. "Do you see the stars?" The disciple squinted. "Not yet." The teacher replied, "Then keep looking. The light is not late. It is your eyes that must adjust." Growth is like that, imperceptible, until suddenly one morning you notice the heart softer, the breath calmer, the world less sharp. Nothing changed, and yet everything did. The seed's dream of light is not ambition. It is remembrance. Somewhere inside it carries the image of the sun, though it has never seen it. Likewise, within every being lies the memory of awakening the deep knowing that peace is our original nature. This memory pulls us upward through the darkness of habit, confusion, and fear. It is not desire, it is gravity of the soul. Still, every sprout must break its shell, and that breaking hurts. The seed cannot remain intact and reach the surface. The shell was its protection, but what once saved it now confines it. The same is true for us. We build shells of identity, beliefs, opinions, old wounds, and call them me. But there comes a moment when growth demands rupture. A monk once asked Master, "Why does awakening require suffering?" The Master held up a seed and cracked it open. Because the light cannot enter a shell that will not break. Pain, then, is not punishment. It is pressure, the necessary tension between what we have been and what we are becoming. When you suffer, do not curse the weight. Whisper instead, "Something within me is preparing to bloom." In the same way, love is sunlight, gentle, patient, relentless. It does not force the seed to open. It waits until the warmth is sufficient. This is why the Buddha called compassion the greatest teacher. It ripens all things in time. The awakened life is not an escape from darkness, but a partnership with it. The lotus does not despise the mud. It transforms it into nourishment. When we accept our imperfections, they become compost for wisdom. When we reject them, they harden into barriers. Modern minds grow impatient with slowness. We want instant clarity, instant healing, instant enlightenment. But the Dharma moves like nature, season by season, layer by layer. A tree that grows too fast cannot bear fruit. Its wood remains weak. Likewise, wisdom matures through endurance, not haste. If you feel lost in your practice, if everything seems stagnant, remember the seed. The silence of your struggle is not emptiness. It is gestation. Trust what you cannot yet see. At times, storms will come shaking loose the soil of certainty. Let them. Rain does not drown a true seed. It softens the earth around it. Every challenge that arrives is water for your becoming. When the sprout finally pierces the surface, it does not shout, "I have won." It simply turns toward the sun, as if bowing to a truth it always knew. That humility is enlightenment, the recognition that growth was never your doing, but life's doing through you. One day, you will look back at your darkest times and see not tragedy, but depth. You will understand that without that darkness, your roots would have been shallow. The soil that frightened you was in fact the cradle of your becoming. So when you feel buried, remember this: you have not been buried. You have been planted. The difference is everything. Close your eyes tonight and feel the warmth gathering in the hidden garden of your heart. Though unseen, the roots are reaching. The shell is softening. The dream of light is stirring. Trust the quiet work. Trust the unseen sun. For even now, beneath the weight of all you carry, something tender within you is pushing upward, slowly, silently, toward the inevitable bloom. Above the world where wind and silence meet, a single cloud drifts formless yet full. It glides effortlessly, never clinging to one shape, never mourning what it was. The cloud is teacher, and teaching both, it gathers, releases, and disappears, yet remains the same water reborn in countless forms. The Buddha once said, "Just as rain fills the low places, so does wisdom fill the humble heart." Clouds understand this instinctively. They rise not to possess the sky, but to serve it, gathering moisture only so they might give it away. When their burden grows heavy, they let it fall as rain. And in that surrender, they become freedom itself. there was once a cloud who longed to stay beautiful forever. It admired its reflection in the lake below and feared losing its perfect shape. When the wind urged it onward, it resisted clinging to the mountain peak. Days passed, and the sun scorched it thin. Finally, with a sigh, the cloud released its water falling as rain across the valley. The fields drank deeply, flowers opened, rivers woke. In the joy of the world, the cloud found its own eternity. To live wisely is to learn the art of that release. The human heart, like a cloud, gathers what it loves, memories, identities, dreams, and holds them until the weight becomes unbearable. The Buddha called this attachment the root of suffering, not because love is wrong, but because clinging blinds love's natural flow. Love must breathe, just as clouds must move. In meditation, we can watch this truth unfold. Thoughts rise like vapor, forming shapes, a plan, a fear, a face. For a while we believe in their solidity, then awareness, the gentle wind moves through, and they dissolve. Nothing is lost, it only changes form. The same thought that once seemed to imprison us becomes nourishment for insight. A monk once told his teacher, "When I meditate, my mind feels like a stormy sky." The teacher replied, "Then stop being the sky. Be the wind that clears it." The monk frowned, "But the wind cannot hold anything." The teacher smiled. Exactly. Letting go does not mean indifference. The cloud does not despise its rain. It fulfills it. Detachment in the Buddhist sense is loving so deeply that you free what you love from ownership. It is to care without chaining, to give without expecting return, to bless the transience of all things. Think of how a river begins born from rain. It flows without hesitation, never turning back to its source to claim what it gave. So too must we learn to flow onward with trust, knowing that what departs from us will return in another form. The friend you lose becomes a lesson in compassion. The dream that fails becomes a seed for wisdom. The moment that passes becomes the silence in which joy can be heard. Modern minds resist impermanence because they mistake holding on for meaning. We try to photograph sunsets, preserve youth, store love in promises. Yet beauty lives only in motion. A sunset that never ends would cease to be beautiful. A love that never changes would cease to be alive. Once a student asked, "Master, how can I learn to let go?" The master held up a glass of water. "If I keep holding this," he said, "my arm will ache. If I drop it, the water will spill. But if I drink it, it becomes part of me." Letting go, then, is not abandonment, it is integration. You do not lose what you release. You absorb its essence and continue. There are times when the clouds in your life will darken. Loss, grief, uncertainty. Remember, the sky is not broken when it rains. The storm is only the sky's way of cleansing itself. Likewise, sorrow is not failure. It is the soul's renewal. Tears are proof that the heart is still willing to water the world. The Buddha once asked his disciples to contemplate a drop of dew at sunrise. "See how it glistens," he said, "and see how quickly it vanishes. Should we mourn its disappearance or thank it for its beauty? Impermanence, when accepted, becomes grace." In everyday life, letting go means small surrenders, releasing the need to win every argument, to be understood by everyone, to have every plan unfold perfectly. It means breathing out as fully as you breathe in. If you hold your breath, even air, the most vital gift becomes poison. There was a woman who lost her garden to a storm. For weeks, she wept, convinced her work was ruined. But when spring came, she noticed something extraordinary. The wind had scattered her seeds into new ground. Wildflowers now bloomed in places she had never planted. She whispered to the sky, "So that's what you were doing. The same is true for us. Life scatters our seeds through the storms of change, planting beauty we may never see. To trust that unseen garden is faith not in the future, but in the intelligence of impermanence itself. When the cloud finally releases its last drop, it becomes transparent, merging again with the invisible air. Its journey ends only to begin anew, mist rising, forming elsewhere, raining again. This endless cycle is not tragedy, but testament. Nothing truly ends, it only transforms. So when you feel yourself dissolving, losing control, identity, or certainty, remember the cloud. Do not fight the wind. Become it. Release what you cannot keep. Bless what must pass, and let your love fall like rain upon the world. For what you give freely will return in time as sky. Every element in nature has its own wisdom. The river teaches surrender. The wind teaches freedom. The earth teaches patience. And fire teaches reverence. It burns, yet it bows. It consumes, yet it illuminates. It transforms everything it touches, not through domination, but through devotion. The Buddha once said, "The mind, when purified, shines like a flame that burns without smoke." That brightness is not aggression, it is clarity. But before a flame can shine, it must learn how to bend. There was once a blacksmith who lived in a small village. Each morning, he knelt before his forge and whispered a short prayer before lighting the coals. A curious boy asked him one day, "Why do you bow to fire?" The blacksmith smiled, "Because I've seen what happens when you don't." He explained that when he was younger, he had treated fire as a servant, feeding it too much, forcing it to burn hotter than it wished. One night, his impatience sparked an explosion that destroyed his workshop. From then on, he learned that fire is not mastered by command, but by respect. When you bow to fire, he said, it bows back. So it is with the inner fire, the force we call desire, passion, will. When guided by ego, it burns recklessly, scorching everything it touches. When guided by awareness, it becomes radiant purpose, steady and generous. The task of spiritual practice is not to extinguish this fire, but to refine it to make it light instead of smoke. We see this clearly in our own hearts. Anger is untrained fire. It demands, destroys, shouts for control. But when met with mindfulness, that same energy transforms into strength, the courage to protect without cruelty, to speak truth without hatred. Love, too, is fire. Left unchecked, it clings and consumes. Refined by wisdom, it becomes warmth, the quiet glow that gives without needing to possess. In meditation, this refinement happens naturally. As attention deepens, the restless sparks of thought settle. The breath becomes the bellows, fanning the flame of awareness into steadiness. Each time you resist distraction, the fire grows cleaner. Each time you return to presence, a little more smoke clears. Eventually, what remains is a glow that neither clings nor fears, a heart both fierce and still. A disciple once asked his teacher, "How can I balance discipline and compassion?" The teacher lit a candle and said, "See how the flame rises straight but soft. Discipline is its spine, compassion is its warmth. The path of awakening is precisely this learning to burn upright without burning out, to hold intensity and gentleness together until they become one." The Buddha himself walked this path, leaving indulgence and self-denial behind, finding the middle way where fire becomes light. Consider how fire interacts with the world. It does not cling to what it transforms. Wood becomes ash, meal becomes nourishment. Night becomes morning. Fire fulfills its purpose, then releases. That is the essence of impermanence practiced through compassion, to give yourself completely to the moment, then let it go without regret. Once an old monk tended the temple's eternal flame. A young novice, eager to help, said, "Why don't we build a wall around it, master? Then it will never go out." The monk chuckled. "If the wind cannot touch it, it will suffocate." Then he handed the boy a fan. Keep it alive not by trapping it, but by breathing with it. In our lives, we often try to preserve our passion by enclosing it, turning inspiration into identity, purpose into pride. But fire locked inside becomes smoke. Passion guarded by fear becomes exhaustion. The only way to keep our flame alive is to stay open to change, to be touched, to breathe. Fire also teaches humility. No matter how bright it burns, it bows before what nourishes it. Watch a candle's flame. It always leans toward its source of air, as if in constant gratitude. This bowing is the posture of wisdom. The more we understand life's interdependence, the more reverently we move through the world. The ego wants to blaze like a bonfire, visible, impressive, celebrated. But the awakened heart prefers to be a lamp, quiet, consistent, lighting the path for others. The lamp does not worry about who sees its glow. It simply shines until the oil is done, and then returns to darkness with peace. When you act, ask yourself, am I burning to be seen or burning to illuminate? The first leads to exhaustion, the second to liberation. There will be days when your inner flame wanes, when faith flickers, when kindness feels forced, when meditation turns dull. Do not fear these moments. Even fire needs rest. Ash is not failure. It is soil for new sparks. The Buddha compared faith to kindling once lit. It must be tended with care. A little wind challenge, doubt, difficulty keeps it alive. In time, as practice matures, the fire of effort transforms into the light of being. You no longer strive to burn. You simply radiate. The energy that once fought the world now warms it. The same fire that once consumed now creates. When the blacksmith finishes his work, he lets the fire die, then bows again. He knows that every flame, no matter how bright, must return to ash. But in that ash lies the memory of heat, the invisible mark of something sacred that passed through and changed everything it touched. So tonight, when you light a candle or see the sun sink into the horizon, remember the fire does not vanish. It continues in another form. And within you burns the same eternal spark, ancient as the stars, humble as a single flame, bowing to the wind. Keep it alive with awareness. Let it shine without pride. And when the moment comes to release it, bow with gratitude. For even in its last flicker, fire knows how to give light.